So before I venture into some of the things that I wanted to talk about regarding this new control flow, I know for a fact from my secret sources that Edward has been doing some research, and my secret sources are private messages on Slack. So, Edward, do you have something? Did you like manage to come up with something?
Yeah, I first of all, I want to react to Temba, what you said. I agree. I like the metaphor with the salt. And where I'm not agreeing fully with you, Jay, is the fact that now bringing this new control flow will kinda replace the directive, at least in the mind of most of the users. So I think that mostly people will try to, or at least use the control flow most of the time. And I believe that it will have a huge impact on every application. How do we write Angular application? And I believe that in some scenarios, I mentioned one on Twitter, which is for example, the permission scenario that you have to repeat all over the application. Um, I believe that those scenarios, you cannot tackle them in the right way using only control flow. Even if the control flow will look like to be the normal way to do conditional rendering or something like this. And I think it has the impact of hiding how directive works, because directive will then become like a low-level API that no one's want to care about. And I believe that, yeah, it can have a huge impact on, I don't know, enterprise application that could benefit from reusing logic, using directives. So that's something I wanted to bring to the table.
Fair. Uh, can I comment something on that? I think it's a good example of how we have used built-in directives to achieve that functionality. Like even the example you mentioned is a very classical one, like writing a permissions directive, right? The thing is, did we really use the ngIf directive to achieve that before Angular v15, I believe, when host directives dropped? We used the view rendering API, like create embedded view, if I remember correctly before. I have authored some directives like that previously, and it was before host directive. So really, we didn't actually use like the ngIf implementation. We did it so in new versions of Angular, and it became somewhat cleaner. Like it reduced 2 lines of boilerplate, but I don't think that's a big benefit. I don't think. I think the syntax is changing, but I don't think the actual, the creation of DOM elements behind the scenes changes. I didn't see that in the RFC anywhere. I don't think we won't be able to, for example, create embedded views from components and directives. Am I right?
You are right. No, it's not changing, and the underlying concept are still the same. But I believe that we have conventions, and Angular has strong opinions on how to achieve things, and that's kind of the first time we have like the situation where we have two ways to do the same, and one seems very simple. So I believe people will go for it. And there is the old way, which is the directive way. And it has a lot of drawbacks, but it also is very powerful in some way. So I'm afraid that by convention, people will just use the control flow and forget a bit about the directive because it's too complex, even if the control flow still use the same concept behind the scene. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on the having two approaches problem and directives being not very super popular. But I guess The main thing with directives, they're always, well, not always, but like lots of times they're marketed as, oh, components are custom HTML elements in general, and directives are like custom HTML attributes, which, yeah, on the surface it looks like that, but really directives are more like functionality that we can add. They're like a function. I'm speaking very in rough terms, but I think directives might possibly need some rebranding because usually when people start learning about directives, they learn about attribute directives first. But in reality, they have encountered structural directives previously. So I think some kind of new approach of talking about directives would be like, oh, you can add functionality to elements without components, right? You can add the functionality directly to some HTML element without modifying the DOM. And if you want to modify the DOM of some particular thing, but without a custom template, like without a component, you can do it with structural directives. And maybe that sort of approach could now become the lens that we view directives through.
Yeah, I just want to challenge the ideas. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling that we should not use control flow. I'm just trying to find the limitation behind the new concept. I can see some, but definitely I see a lot of benefits. That's for sure.
Yeah, I totally get that. I actually love directives. I write lots of articles about them. And yeah, my main concern was always that, people underutilize them. Like we can use directives way more and achieve a lot of stuff. But this all stems, here's another way of thinking about it. Like this all stems from the fact that templates are overlooked as code. We don't think about templates as much as we think about TypeScript, which is a bit weird because the actual stuff is happening in the templates. That's what we show in the end, right, on the screen. And lots of people, in my experience, and I've worked with lots of Angular developers, they kind of think about template with something that this place can be dirty, this place can be ugly, and usually you introduce directives into it to make the template simpler because you cannot use directive in any other context. So because people don't care about the template, they won't care about directives either. So probably another way is if we already by default make the templates cleaner with a new control flow, for example, and this is just conjecture, maybe this will actually make people more interested in directives because, well, now you have more of a syntax in the template, and there will be more conventions about it and more people thinking about the template in the way that, this needs to be clean. We have less questions now to discuss because in lots of situations people say, oh, we really don't care. It works in the template. But now there is more of a concrete syntax, some sort of approach that every project will have. You won't think about, oh, should the ngIf be the first property on an HTML element or not? Or should we always use ng container? Or should we use a template for it? Or maybe we should write something custom for it. Now we have a syntax for that. So now Angular team directly is addressing the problems that we might encounter in the templates. So who knows, maybe directives become more popular because of this.
Yeah, the syntax is very attractive for other people. I think that all newcomers will like it. But for example, Jay, you told before that it's maybe not the right time to think about a way to extend this control flow. And I not totally agree with that because we are RFC style, and I think that thinking before on a way how we can extend it is the right time. Even if, okay, the control flow will cover the majority of the use case, it's very attractive, we want to use it, but what about all the real use case of big applications where you have to customize things because, I don't know, there is a bunch of things, it's complex, there is performance problem involved, so you need to make it work. And to make it work, sometimes you need to get in depth and being able to hook into the system. That's why I like Angular. It's because you can hook into the change detector. You can you have control over a bunch of things. And in this RFC, it's something that is quite missing in my opinion.